All right, good morning. I have just had the worst sleep that I've had in months, and I have a massive paper to do um, for my master's. But I just thought it'd be fun to do a little recap of where we are right now for those of you who are watching this in the future and kind of forgot where to access the sheet, or for those of you who are a random stranger who happened upon this, got interested, and don't know the results. So we're going to go over the results of where we are right now. Let's see that one. So these are the results as of the end of round 2, which just played yesterday. Russell versus Jackson, or as I like to say, my dad versus Jackson. We've got a pretty tight race. Jackson just took the lead. But we did get a leader yesterday. So it is Jackson. And then I got to thinking, because Jackson won last year, how can we stop Jackson from winning again this year? So I made this little handy dandy chart. This is the historical evaluation. This goes off of last year's results. None of this is a subjective evaluation where I'm like, well, I think this person will win this round, and I think this person will win that round. It's all purely just kind of by the numbers of what happened last year. So what I did was I said, all right, who does Jackson still have to play against? Who does Conrad still have to play against? And then I looked at kind of this match history. So for example, Jackson plays against me, he plays against Roy, and he plays against Conrad. And then I said, historically, Jackson has won against Roy, gone even with me, and lost to Conrad. And so that's kind of what I did here. So Conrad has won against Roy Stefan Jackson. Roy has lost to Conrad and Jackson and has gone even with my dad. I've gone even with Jackson, won against my dad, but we only played one round last year. So I counted that as being a half point because it's entirely possible my dad would have won the next game. And given it's my dad, he probably would have. It was probably kind of an underdog story that I won that, especially last year, because I've gotten a lot better since then. So it's kind of an upset. So anyway, I just counted it as like I went even with him. And then I won against Stefan. My dad won one round against Stefan, so again, I counted that as having gone even though I think my dad probably would have won the second game. But we're just going to play it fair, say it was even. Stefan could have won the next one. I am kind of rooting for Stefan to be the Kingslayer in this tournament. I hope that happens. So yeah, so he won one round against Stefan, lost one round to me, and went even with Roy. Oh, did he lose one round to me? Oh no, that's my dad, not Stefan. Lost one round to me, so he went even. He was even with Stefan, even with me, and even with Roy. And I think that was genuinely he won one, lost one with Roy. And then Stefan lost one to dad, lost fully against Conrad, and then lost to me. So then this is how I calculated that. And so I said, I'm not going to repeat everything here, but so for example, with Jackson, it says won against Roy, gone even with me, and lost to Conrad. So we counted that as +1, +0.5, and +0. This is just kind of saying if we assume the same thing that happened last year happens again this year, this is kind of what we're expecting to see. So for example, Conrad had a strong record against all three of the people he's up against next. So he went +1, +1, +1. And then we get this idea of going even by counting only one round. So I only won one round against my dad, so we're going to count that as 0.5. What happens when we add these numbers to the current scores is we get these expected outputs. So the expected final score for Jackson is 3.5, expected for Conrad is 4, expected for Roy is 0.5, expected for me is 3, expected for my dad is 2.5, and expected for Stefan is 1.5. What that means is it's not that when I say expected, I don't mean this is the final score that I actually expect them to have. It means if we played from this current setup, you know, a million times, these would be like the average scores that we would get over time. If you were to kind of record that. So if Jackson played a million games from being +2 after round 2, and then had to play me, Roy, and Conrad, then if you averaged all those scores, he would get 3.5 over time. So this next column kind of tallies what happens if you lose all of the games that were even. So because those are the most contentious, those are the ones you're most likely to lose compared to, say, the ones you have a strong record against. And not counting the ones that I'm just saying you lose. So if Jackson loses the ones that he's even with, so me, then he drops that 0.5 marker. And so if he loses the ones which are even, then he has a 3. Conrad's unchanged. Roy drops down to 0. I drop down to 2 because I had kind of 2 halvesies, which makes 1, so -1. My dad drops down to 1, so he had a lot that he was even with, and Stefan drops down to 1. If you win your evens, it looks like this. It goes 4, 4, 1, 4, 4, 2. And then I said, well, you know, Roy's a very strong player. We can't just say he's going to lose his evens. We can't just go by what he's done with in the past. He is, in fact, a very strong player. So let's look at the highest possible scores. This is if you just win every game for the rest of the tournament. If that's the case, Jackson's fully unstoppable. Everyone else besides Roy can still achieve 4 points. Roy, because he's just kind of a little bit behind, can only achieve max. That doesn't mean that Roy. Is there a path where Roy wins? Because I mean, he has one. He could win 3 out of 5, which is more than anyone else has done. So let's say if Roy wins 1, 2, 3, and we kind of alternate. I'm not very good at these calculations. So Roy wins 3. Jackson has to lose. Oh, we could have a tie and then a playoff. So I think it's possible for Roy to win here. I don't exactly see the path. That doesn't mean it's not possible. I do think Roy can still win, though. Just kind of eyeballing it. But obviously, he's at the biggest disadvantage here. And then, like, other people can tie. So, yeah, like, so if Roy wins the next 3 games and then basically, like, everything else is a tie among the other players, then Roy can, I think, just flat out win. Anyway, I was looking at these, and then I did an analysis. So we're not playing with Avi this year, which changes things. Because Roy, Jackson, and my dad had the strongest history against Avi. They all went 2-0 against him. They all had 2 victories, no losses. Conrad, on the other hand, actually lost twice to Avi. So we should expect that Roy, Jackson, and my dad are going to perform worse because Avi's gone, while Conrad will perform better. And I made this note. Interestingly, Jackson and Conrad were only separated by 2 points last year. So this is just like if you go to the results of 2022, and we played a double round robin here instead of a single round robin. If you look at the difference here, this is basically just Jackson beating Avi and Conrad not beating Avi. You know, if they'd both gone 1-1 against Avi, it would have been a tie. Yeah. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. Is that Avi was last year the deciding factor. I mean, you could argue a lot of things were the deciding factor, but I'm just going to say Avi was the deciding factor between Conrad and Jackson. And so maybe we should expect that things are going to be closer this year. And certainly if you look at the expected, I mean, Jackson only has to kind of win his game with me tomorrow to suddenly get his expected score into just straight 4 range. So that's fun. That being said, Um, I still give Conrad the edge just because he has such a strong history against who he's going up against next. He's kind of, as of last year, never lost against Roy, Stefan, or Jackson, who is who he's going up against. So basically, Conrad just seems to more certain to reach for than Jackson does. Um, More likely, I guess. Probably certain's probably not super correct. Um, but nothing certain, I guess, is really the point here. And then the last thing is that Conrad's specific history against Jackson is pretty strong. So if it comes down to a playoff, Conrad has won both of he beat back Jackson both times last year. So if it comes down to a playoff, I would expect Conrad to win rather than Jackson. And I'm super glad that I put Conrad versus Jackson last. So that'll be the last match of the tournament. It does seem like where our leaders are going to come from as of right now. Obviously, nobody's really out of it. Roy has the worst chances, but he's not out of it. Yeah, this is it. That's it. That's the whole thing. I just wanted a recap of the scores, recap of where we're at, recap of kind of my evaluation for who I think might win. I'm going to give the edge to Conrad as of the end of round 2. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.